There's a kind of person who will never say they miss you, but they quietly watch you while pretending everything's just fine. They don't beg, they don't chase, they don't explode like narcissists might. Avoidants go silent, but don't be fooled. Their silence is not forgetting it's a quiet storm unraveling layer by layer inside them. You think you've lost them, but the truth is, they are the ones slowly losing you. And the scariest part? They don't realize it until your silence becomes truly permanent. This video is for you if you're going no contact with an avoidant person. They once made you feel like you were too much. They pulled away the moment you reached for closeness. They appeared calm while you were breaking inside. In this video, I'll walk you through what's actually happening inside their mind after you've disappeared. Not to help you win them back, but to help you understand just how powerful and self-honoring your silence truly is. We're going to explore the 7 silent psychological phases avoidants go through, from false calm to quiet checking, to the moment they finally begin to feel your absence for real. If you're on a healing journey and want to understand the hidden dynamics of avoidant attachment, hit subscribe and stay until the end, because by the time we're done, you'll see silence is not weakness. It's the boundary that sets you free. 1. The false calm phase. I'm fine is just a performance. When you go silent, the first thing an avoidant feels is not loss, it's relief. They won't admit it, but deep inside, they whisper to themselves, "Finally, some space to breathe. I knew this wasn't going to last. This is probably for the best." These internal statements sound logical, but they're not peace. They're avoidance disguised as control. They're not fine. They're just avoiding the discomfort of loss through distance. This is what we call the false calm phase, the part where they look unbothered, even cheerful. They may post lighthearted content, stay busy with work, or move through daily life like you never existed. But don't be fooled. This calm doesn't come from healing, it comes from emotional suppression conditioned by past wounds. Most avoidants grew up learning that emotions are unsafe, that closeness equals losing independence. So when you pull away, their defense system kicks in. They rationalize, they detach, they disconnect. They don't process the loss, they try to control it by denying it exists. This calm they project is really an illusion of control. They believe if they don't touch the pain, it won't touch them. But the truth is, the more they suppress their feelings, the more those feelings wait quietly in the shadows. During this phase, it might seem like they've already forgotten you. But don't mistake detachment for indifference. The more fine they act, the more effort it takes to feel nothing at all. And eventually, that effort begins to crack. 2. The checking phase. When they want you to stay, but don't dare come closer. After the dust of the false calm settles, a subtle emptiness begins to take shape. It's not loud grief, it's quiet and conflicted. This is when the avoidant enters their second phase, the checking phase. They won't call, they won't text, but they will quietly watch your stories. They'll reread old messages you once sent. They'll study your new profile picture. Sometimes, they'll even ask mutual friends how you're doing just to confirm one thing, that you're still there. They're not looking for love. They're looking for safety. It sounds contradictory, doesn't it? They're the ones who pushed you away. They distanced themselves first, but deep inside, they're not ready for you to truly disappear. To them, you're like an emotional safety net, not something they want to hold on to, but something they're terrified to let go of. At the heart of every avoidant lies a quiet fear. What if you're genuinely happy without them? And that fear doesn't come from deep love. It comes from the deepest insecurity, the belief that they were never enough to be truly needed. So they watch, not to understand your life, but to measure whether they still have a place in it. If you post something sad, they feel relieved. If you go quiet, they get uneasy. If you laugh freely with someone else, they feel threatened but will never admit it. Their world is built on silence, but it's a silence full of control. They're not brave enough to come back. They're not strong enough to let go. They exist in between. And in that space, they secretly monitor you, trying to maintain a thread of connection without confronting their real emotions. Don't mistake this watching for care. This is not love. It's the avoidance way of preventing abandonment from becoming real. They just want to know you haven't gone too far, that you still respond, that you're still there. And if one day you stop reacting, stop posting, stop hurting, start smiling freely, they panic, not because they're ready to love you right, but because you've touched their deepest fear, losing control in silence. 3. Rationalizing phase, when words become a fortress. The days of silently monitoring your feeds are behind them. Now they open their mouths to explain their retreat to others. You have become the invisible adversary. Not out of longing, but to justify their own withdrawal. She was too demanding. He always needed reassurance. We just weren't compatible. These explanations form a sturdy shield around their heart, blocking any ray of guilt or regret from penetrating. Outwardly, they speak with confidence and razor-sharp logic. Relationships reach a point where they must end or risk becoming more painful. They repeat to friends that it's the right, wise decision, seeking consensus and validation. Yet internally, they're torn between two opposing forces. One is fear. Was I just cowardly? And the other is self-defense. I can't give everything without getting anything in return. End 1. Through rationalizations, avoidants craft an invulnerable version of themselves. They refuse to admit vulnerability or that they've hurt you. Every explanation is meticulously calibrated to satisfy the ego, while masking the embarrassment of failing to maintain the bond. This is the essence of ego preservation. They must remain fine, right, unblemished. If they concede their mistake and acknowledge your pain, their protective wall crumbles and shame avoidance loses its power. At that moment, they would have to confront the overwhelming guilt they've been evading. So, they cast about for objective culprits, external pressures, work demands, mental fatigue. They assign blame to circumstances, anything to avoid owning their fault. They tell mutual acquaintances, I was already too generous. I just needed some space. They transform withdrawal into a calculated necessity, not a moral failing. Every word they speak, every story they spin, is choreographed so that you and others only see a composed rationalist, not a wounded soul. When confronted, they double down on logic. I can't let emotions govern my life. They blend cold detachment with decisive clarity, creating the illusion of unwavering lucidity. Yet behind this counterfeit confidence lies an unfillable void. Each justification acts as a brick in their protective fortress and simultaneously deepens the chasm between them and their true feelings. Over time, they become prisoners of their own reasoning, and loneliness creeps in. Only when you maintain your silence without rebuttal or confrontation do those defensive bricks begin to tremble. They cannot ignore the echo within, the voice of self-doubt, of remorse, of solitude that logic cannot silence. C. Testing phase, when they probe your boundary. After the justification phase used to protect their ego, avoidants enter a conflicted behavioral cycle. They send half-hearted signals simply to gauge your limits. They send a meaningless text like, how have you been? They heart a story that has nothing to do with them. They reshare an old meme you both once laughed at, or offer a generic, just checking in message. According to attachment theory research by Mikulincer and Shaver, 2007, these behaviors reflect an emotional radar mechanism people build to detect safety cues in relationships. Avoidants aren't seeking deep connection. They only need to know if you've left a crack open for them to test the waters of your emotional world. In their minds, your presence becomes a metric of their relevance. If you reply to a casual message, you're still there. If you ignore them, you're gone. This isn't a longing for love, but a fear of losing control over distance. Cassidy and Berlin, 1994, found that avoidant attachment combines a craving for freedom with a fear of intimacy, and the testing phase is where that internal conflict is laid bare. Notably, they choose the gentlest tactics to minimize rejection risk: a like, a short text, an emoji. Each time you respond, even with an emoji, they breathe a sigh of relief because they know you're still paying attention. But if you stay silent, they grow uneasy, may follow up with another message, or withdraw entirely, left wondering why you won't engage. This checking for access pattern is like a scientific experiment. Small steps, observe the response, then adjust the next move. They refuse to accept the relationship might be over. They're trying to determine whether you've closed the door or are merely hesitant. Rolls and Simpson, 2004, demonstrated that avoidants use this feedback-seeking strategy to reduce their internal anxiety, even though it inadvertently pushes them further from genuine connection. During this phase, you can see two simultaneous forces in action: fear of abandonment versus reluctance to open up. The drama peaks when you respond too readily. Immediately, they shrink back to re-establish safe distance, as studies show rapid reciprocation triggers avoidance fear of losing autonomy. Conversely, if you don't reply, they panic and often check again repeatedly. Understanding this phase allows you to consciously regulate your own energy. Instead of being pulled into the testing game, observe and recognize it as a sign your boundary is being probed. Rather than answering immediately, take a moment to ground yourself, set clear limits, and prioritize your emotions. Relationship expert Susan Johnson, 2019, recommends mindful and intentional responses to break the testing cycle and cultivate true safety for both parties. 5. Realization phase, when grief arrives late in silence. After the cycles of testing and rationalization, the avoidant finally perceives the void you left behind, not through superficial interactions, but deep in their daily habits. They become quieter, no longer mentioning you to friends or mindlessly scrolling your feed. Instead, you reappear in their thoughts like an old melody unexpectedly playing in their mind, evoking moments of peace they once rejected. This is the delayed grief phase, described by John Bowlby's attachment theory. When emotions are postponed, they strike not immediately, but when defenses grow fatigued. Research by Fraley and Shaver, 1998, shows that avoidants often exhibit sorrow and loss last only after they are certain you're gone and can no longer evade their feelings. At this moment, they ask themselves, how did I ever feel so safe with them? Images of tranquil nights, unrushed conversations, gentle embraces become vivid. The very behaviors that once made them uncomfortable emotional questions, deep sharing now feel precious, the only pieces adding color to their world. They truly miss the safety, not the control you offered. Studies by Mikulincer, Shaver, and Perig, 2003, find that avoidants facing loss suffer from an emotional gap, a chasm between inner needs and outward expression. They feel the ache, but lack the vocabulary to articulate it. They may withdraw further, stopping texts, ignoring weekend plans, or brushing off invitations. Yet beneath the silence lies an intense inner suffering manifested as absence rather than outcry. You might notice subtle shifts. Their social media feed no longer radiates joy, stories go unliked, or they post a lengthy status about loneliness without tagging you. When asked, "Are you okay?" they offer a faint smile and pivot the conversation, unable to utter, "I miss someone very much." Recognizing this phase empowers you to maintain your boundary guilt-free. As Dr. Sue Johnson, 2019, recommends, when the avoidant enters the realization stage, your most constructive response isn't to rush back but to sustain intentional silence, allowing them to fully experience delayed grief. So if they reach out, it springs from genuine need, not mere testing. Remember, their postponed pain is proof of the power of your choice. By holding firm in silence, you not only safeguard your own boundaries, but grant them one last opportunity to confront their emotions, an essential step toward authentic emotional growth. 6. Mirror phase, when silence becomes a mirror. When the walls of rationalization and testing finally collapse, the avoidant experiences a moment of eerie stillness. There is nowhere left to run but within themselves. In this phase, they begin to reflect on past relationships, rereading every overlooked conversation and recognizing the pattern of pushing others away that dominated their connections. They hear echoes of unspoken apologies and realize, for the first time, they are truly sitting with themselves in silence, confronting the loneliness, guilt, and fear buried long ago. According to Hooper et al., 2008, on internal feedback loops, when emotional avoidance no longer holds, an unfillable void emerges, what John Bowlby described as the attachment system's breakdown point. They see that every justification and excuse was merely a curtain to mask their fragile pain. They review the moments they drove you away and realize not only did you vanish, but they also lost a vital part of themselves, the ability to open up, to trust in connection, and to feel emotional security. In this self-reflective moment, repressed feelings surge. They experience guilt for turning your care into pressure, loneliness without the one who stood by them in weakness, and fear as they realize, if they continue avoiding, they will remain forever isolated. Main and Solomon, 1990, emphasize that this very self-observation triggers change. When reason can no longer suppress emotion, the natural inward response drives a reconnection with attachment needs. They may start journaling, lighting candles, or setting reminders to honor what's lost. Some even turn to guided mindfulness practices, as recommended by Russell Harris, 2019, to anchor in the present moment and feel their pain instead of fleeing from it. Interestingly, in the quiet, external noise fades, and internal echoes grow louder. However, not everyone has the courage to complete this journey. Many avoidants withdraw again when the mirror becomes too blinding and forces confrontation. Yet those who persist into this phase experience a rebirth, shifting from pushing others away to learning how to hold relationships close. Shaver and Mikulincer, 2012, found that this painful self-confrontation lays the groundwork for developing secure attachment patterns later on. And then, from guilt, loneliness, and fear, they move to self-understanding, self-compassion, and accountability. Silence is no longer a refuge, but becomes a gateway to transformation. They learn to set healthy boundaries, to share feelings authentically, and most importantly, they no longer flee when faced with the most dangerous weapon, their own heart. Attempted re-entry and reckoning phase, when their last message tests the soul. Once all defenses have waned, the avoidant often experiences a sudden resurgence. They reach out with emotionally laden messages, mirroring the silence they once used to flee. A simple, "I still think about you in the dead of night," or "Lately I've been reminiscing about us." These aren't mere pleasantries. They signal an intense craving for the comfort you once provided, emotional safety, unconditional understanding, and a space they no longer dare to build within themselves. Crucially, these messages do not imply genuine change. Feeney and Kirkpatrick's 1996 Attachment Dynamics research indicates that avoidant recontact behavior often stems from a desire to manage internal uncertainty rather than real intimacy. They return because amid fleeting connections, you remain a familiar emotional anchor, if only to test whether the door is still ajar. If you respond even briefly, they rejoice in discovering they're still welcome. Yet instantly, anxiety resurfaces. Will I become trapped in this emotional cycle again? Once assured of your presence, they feel both relief and terror, fear that intimacy might ensnare them once more. Rolls et al. 2011 found avoidants experience this ambivalence deeply, craving closeness yet dreading it. Conversely, if you maintain silence, this is the first time the avoidant truly experiences utter solitude, no one to share their emotional burden, no emotional safety net as they presume. They confront an unavoidable truth. It's not that you're too busy, but that you've chosen not to remind them anymore. If sustained, this choice forces them to face the void they created, rather than escaping into avoidance loops. This phase marks a vital maturing milestone. They realize their inner voice can no longer be drowned out by excuses. They must ask themselves, am I really ready to face and change? Developmental psychology regards this reckoning as the starting point for emotional maturation, when avoidants begin learning to hold others' boundaries, while taking responsibility for their own. Experts like Sue Johnson, 2019, recommend that when avoidants are met with patient but unresponsive boundaries, they gradually recognize the value of a secure bond. Your silence thus becomes the final invitation for them to self-assess, continue the game of hide and seek, or commit to honest dialogue. And if they retreat into silence again, it simply proves you have constructed a boundary strong enough to protect your heart. If they send another message now genuine and specific, it may signal an inner awakening, no longer shielding with words, but openly vowing not to flee again. In every outcome, your steadfast silence is the ultimate lesson. Without your true presence, there's no one left to catch them when they fall. It's both a gift and a challenge you offer the avoidant. Stand firm in your own boundary and invite them to choose growth or continue avoidance. The attempted re-entry stage goes beyond a simple nostalgic text. It is a nuanced behavioral sequence where the avoidant makes one final test of your established boundary, while also confronting the distance they themselves created. They no longer pile on elaborate justifications, only an emotionally tinged message surfaces. I still think about you. Or, lately, I've been remembering us. According to Fraley and Shaver, 2000, when avoidantly attached individuals experience a significant attachment rupture, in this case, no contact, they often re-emerge not just to probe, but to compare the safety they had with the stark reality of silence. They seek confirmation, am I still welcome? Yet by sending that message, they also place themselves in the vulnerable position of facing rejection for the first time. Research by Feeney and Kirkpatrick, 1996, suggests that avoidants carry a profound ambivalence between seeking comfort and fearing loss of autonomy. Their messages are a silent cry. They crave the emotional solace you once provided, but lack the courage to fully engage. When they write, I miss you, it is with trepidation, hoping for a response to reaffirm their relevance in your life. However, the pivotal moment lies in your response, or lack thereof. A hasty, emotional reply reignites the old cycle: connection, then avoidance, then connection again. Conversely, consistent silence, your final boundary, creates an entirely new challenge. For the first time, the avoidant cannot blame anyone. They must face the ultimate solitude of no emotional lifeline. They confront the truth. You didn't merely get busy, you chose not to reopen that door. If sustained, this choice compels them to acknowledge the void they made, rather than escaping into avoidance cycles. Rolls et al., 2011, demonstrated that avoidants subjected to unwavering rejection undergo an emotional reckoning, the painful awareness that they summoned their own storm. The anguish isn't just missing you, it is recognizing their role as architect of loss. This reckoning is the catalyst for reckoning with one's pattern. To transcend this threshold, avoidance must simultaneously acknowledge shame and embrace vulnerability. Emotionally focused therapy. Sue Johnson, 2019, highlights that a secure boundary, paired with compassionate presence, provides a safe container for the avoidant to actively choose reconnection when ready. Some avoidants experience a transformative shock upon realizing your silence isn't a weapon, but a declaration of self-worth. They see that you remain unresponsive because you no longer need them to feel whole. Should you respond with firm clarity, I chose silence, and I stand by it, they have no safe fallback. That moment births their reckoning. They confront that you are not an endless fallback option, and that genuine connection can't be manipulated with tentative messages. Your consistent transparency and resolve become the only power capable of breaking this emotional pattern. Surviving this phase means the avoidant begins their emotional maturation, rebuilding trust, embracing secure bonds, and learning to share rather than flee. This journey doesn't pivot on a single reply or embrace, but unfolds through repeated self-reflection, interior dialogue, and openness to external support. For you, sustaining silence in this phase isn't about winning them back. It is extending one last invitation. Do I genuinely long to keep this person in my life, or am I merely clutching the safety they once offered? And there lies the transformative milestone that shapes both your futures. And that brings us through the 7 phases an avoidant experiences when you choose to go completely silent. 1. False calm. I'm fine masks their loneliness. 2. Quiet checking. They secretly verify you haven't disappeared. 3. Rationalizing and ego defense. Explanations that avoid guilt. 4. Testing reactions. Hazy messages as emotional radar. 5. Delayed grief. The late ache of the void you left behind. 6. Mirror phase. Silence becomes a mirror of guilt and fear. 7. Attempted re-entry and reckoning. Their final texts confront solitude and personal growth. Core message of this video: always choose to honor and protect your own worth, rather than chase fleeting emotion. Thank you sincerely for staying until the end. Your presence and focus fuel my commitment to sharing meaningful content. I warmly invite you to share your thoughts or personal experiences in the comments below. Reflecting out loud not only empowers your own journey, but also inspires our community. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss future videos where we'll continue to explore relationships, healing, and self-development. Every small step forward deserves celebration. Trust that this journey will lead you to inner freedom and peace. We're moving forward together.